proceed with the items on the agenda, I need to remind you of the usual housekeeping messages. There are no fire alarm tests planned for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the chambers by the nearest door, then follow the illuminated priority signs and assemble in the car park at the rear of the building. Would you all please ensure that your mobile phones and tablet devices are on silent mode, and also a gentle reminder about appropriate behaviour in the council chamber. We ask that everyone respect councillors and officers when business is being carried out. If a member of the public interrupts the proceedings, I shall intervene accordingly. You have the right to film this meeting if you so wish, but I would like to know before we begin whether anybody in the room plans to do this. If you need to film the meeting or part of it, would you please indicate now? Apologies for our absence. We've got apologies from councillors Beaver, Duffy, Fielding, Lamaranel, Higginson, Rayner and Councillor Jackson. Are there any more apologies to be submitted this evening?
Councillor Baxter.
The next item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. Please can I have a proposal that minutes of the council meeting held on the 18th of April 2024 be approved as a correct record? Is there a second of that proposal?
I'll second that.
Does anyone want to comment on the factual accuracy of the meetings to propose an amendment? Would all those members present at the 18th of April meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please indicate clearly. Thank you. The minutes of the 18th of April are confirmed. Please can I have now a proposal the minutes of the annual council meeting held on 16th of May 2024 be approved as a correct record?
Is
there a second to that proposal?
I'll second that.
Does anyone want to comment on the factual accuracy of the minutes or proposing amendment? For those members present at the 16th of May meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please clearly indicate. The minutes of the meeting of the 16th of May are confirmed. The next item on the agenda is item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members or officers have any interest to declare on any items included in the agenda? Okay. The next item is item 4, announcements. We have a few announcements this evening. Over the summer, my deputy and I have been lucky enough to attend such events such as galas, Power Memorial Auditorium Service for the 80th anniversary of the D-Day service, Armed Forces flag raising, the Fire Cadets passing out and parades, along many other student awards evenings, Tram Sunday, and other activities, and we've got lots lined up in the future. We've got remembrance services coming up, and we've also got an awards night, such as the Active Wyre Awards, and there are plenty coming up as we come into Christmas. It would be wonderful to see some faces there supporting our borough in any of these events, and seeing some different faces would be wonderful. The next item is public questions or statements, which we have one. A public question has been submitted by Dr. Barbara Neal. This has been attached to your agenda packs. We have Dr. Barbara Neal in attendance. Would you please come to the lecture to read out your question, and you have 5 minutes to do so.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Dr. Barbara Neal. I would like to submit the following question to Councillor Roger Berry as member of the Local Government Association's Special Interest Group. Wyre Council is a member of the Local Government Association Coastal Special Interest Group and Coastal Group Network. One of the priorities of this group is coastal landfills and recognises the devastating impacts of coastal erosion, flooding and pollution across our coastline. However, there has been little acknowledgement of the hidden silent ticking time bombs that coastal landfill sites present. Jameson Road landfill site was built on a salt marsh and was originally a dilute and dispersed landfill, partly built upon the balancing ponds of the local ICI chemical factory. It is an ageing site of over 50 years which lies immediately on the banks of the tidal river Wyre that is classed as a coastal landfill. Climate change is anticipated to cause higher sea levels, result in increased saline intrusion into estuaries, more frequent and intense storm events, higher storm surges and increased coastal flooding, thus endangering the coastal landfill sites and risking increasing the pollution of the River Wyre estuary with both organic and inorganic contaminants. I would like to ask Wyre Council what engagement Councillor Berry and Wyre Council have had with this group and for how long, including how many meetings has Councillor Berry attended, and if not, why not? Has Wyre Council actively engaged with any of their activities, and what Wyre Council plans are with the future with respect to the membership of this group? Thank you.
Councillor Berry, would you respond to the question? You have 5 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Neil, for your question. Wyre Council is involved with the LGA Special Interest Group. I'm the member lead, and Carl Green, the Council's Assistant Director of Engineering, is the officer lead. The meetings are held online and sometimes in person in London. Whilst I have always checked through the agendas for the meetings, I have found that in the last few years meetings have concentrated on the severe erosion of the coastline on the east coast of England and various field trips in southern England, which I felt did not have an immediate bearing on our present issues in Wyre. I've therefore concentrated on attending meetings about Wyre Beach Management Scheme to protect residential areas of Fleetwood, Glossel and Fleetwood from flooding and prevent erosion of our beaches. I also attend the Wyre Flood Forum meeting of the Fylde Peninsula Group, which is a meeting of officers and lead members from the three Fylde Coast local authority areas dealing with flooding, bathing water quality, clean beaches, etc. And also meetings with Fylde Council on mutual cross-border issues on these subjects. More recently, I've attended meetings on the issues raised in the recent problems at the Fleetwood water treatment plant and the landfill site. And for those reasons, my attendance at the LGA Special Interest Group meetings has been sporadic, and in recent times I can recall attending an online meeting which I had to give up after 2 hours as I had another meeting to attend. However, Carl Green does regularly attend the meetings online, and he reports back to me if there is anything of interest I should know about. We therefore wish to maintain our membership of the group, and I understand that we've been members for quite some time. I can't exactly tell when I'm joining. Carl Green also has extensive contact with the coastal group networks, which are officer groups with no political representatives, and nationally he is chair of the North West and North Wales group and keeps me informed of issues relevant to Wyre. The Southern Coastal Group are leading a call to arms on historical coastal landfill and have applied for funding to investigate the issues raised in your question. Carl is supporting and keeping abreast of the outcomes of this initiative. The Fleetwood landfill site is monitored and has a good level of protection. The lead on the estuary defences is the Environment Agency. However, the overall strategic management of the coast is led by the Shoreline Management Plan, which is led by the Coastal Group. The landfill site comes under the Fleetwood to Stanner section of the plan, which has a policy of hold the line, i.e. maintaining or upgrading the existing coastal defences to keep the shoreline in its correct position. This covers the period to 2105.
Dr. Bradley Neal, you do have the opportunity to raise a supplementary question if you wish. This must arise directly from the original question or the group algorithm.
Okay. So, through membership of this group, Wyre Borough Council have been aware for a period of time of the potential environmental hazards and risks associated with such a coastal landfill site, albeit it seems that you've not raised that in the group. What environmental risk assessment was conducted prior to the reopening of the Jameson landfill site for example with respect to climate change, coastal erosion, historic chemical contamination and pollution into the Wyre estuary? And if so, what countermeasures and plans are Wyre Borough Council implementing to monitor the effect and prevent any such further pollution? And if not, why not?
I think the answer, yeah, thank you. I think it's wrong to say that this site is at risk. I think in my question I indicated that it wasn't considered to be a present risk, but obviously it will be monitored. The EA issue a permit. They must take into account climate change. They've given that permit to 2033, as I understand, for this site to be used as a landfill. We will, of course, monitor the site from time to time, but on a recent visit to the site, I can see that the Transwaste who are operating this site seem to have taken on board the necessary issue that they've got to take on board in opening new cells that they will be opening on this site. So therefore, whilst their permit now allows them to continue now to deposit waste on the site, that will be carefully monitored by the EA and also by ourselves.
May I make a comment? Because I don't believe you've actually answered my question. Or am I assuming that the answer is no, you haven't done? Wyre Borough Council hasn't done an environmental risk assessment with respect to a piece of land in Wyre? That's not a supplementary question. I've not had my question answered.
Thank you. That concludes public questions or statements. I think if there needs to be a response from Councillor Barry in writing, then I'm sure there will be something to follow that up.
Can I request then a written response to answer my question, as it's not been answered?
Councillor Barry, can we ask you that from yourself?
I think I've answered, in honesty, I think I've answered your question. I mentioned about the EA issuing this permit, which they must take into account.
I didn't ask you about the permit. So I formally request a written response to my question.
Can I ask then that we've answered the question, we've answered the question and it's not a debate, it was answered the question.
So therefore, can you send me details of how I complain about lack of answer of the question, please?
We feel we've answered the question and we're going to move on to the next
But
one.
as I have the right to complain, so I would like to know who I complain to.
We will respond to that later after the meeting.
Well, I think I need to know now, as do the members of the
We need to
public.
move on with the meeting, so thank you
Well,
very
it's
much.
quite simple. Who do I complain to?
We will answer your question, but we're not going into a debate with this now.
I don't want to debate it. I just want to know who to write to complain about non-answer of the question. I don't know how many times I need to say it.
Dr. Neil, if you want to write to myself as the Chief Executive with a complaint,
Who's
that's fine.
speaking? You.
Rebecca Huddleston, the Chief Executive. If you'd like to write to me with a complaint, that's fine. But we do need to ask you to sit down now, please.
So do you have your word that you will respond to my complaint?
Oh, come on.
If you don't sit down, then I think the Mayor may ask you to leave. So please, can you sit down? And I've told you you can write.
All I want is yes or no. Will you respond to my complaint?
Yes, I've said that you can write to me. Yes.
So you will respond. That's not what you said. You answer the question.
Item 6 is questions on notice from councillors, however we have none. We will now go on to the next item, which is the executive report. A polite reminder that each speaker has 3 minutes only. There will be 10 minutes of speaking overall for each executive report. Please clearly indicate by raising your hand if you do wish to speak. Please also note that I may refuse supplementary questions in order to ensure as many different members as possible are able to ask a question or make a comment within the 10 minutes allocated. First, the report of the Leader of the Council. Councillor Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a really fun summer when it comes to devolution. Following the election, certain newly elected MPs in Lancashire sought to throw their weight around and try and influence government to not only impose a mayor on Lancashire that we don't want, and that 10 of 12 councils resolved that they didn't want as part of discussions about combined authority, They also sought to force all councils to be user authorities. Now, fortunately, sense seems to have prevailed. Conversations between the upper tier authorities and the ministers have gone well. Some of the mistruths that were fed to the minister following the election have been clarified as being untrue. And we understand that, generally speaking, with a few requests from government, that what this council resolved previously is likely to be very similar to what will come forward as a county combined authority. So after some ups and downs, it's gone quite well, and we look like we're getting the deal that we've resolved that we already want. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Councillor Bale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just firstly, would you join me in congratulating the 3 MPs elected to seats covering Wyre Borough, including our very own Councillor Lorraine Beavers, and also providing commiserations, obviously, to Councillor Cartridge. In paragraph 4, it refers to the developing economic strategy. With 9,000 new homes being built in Wyre during the course of the current 20-year local plan, there is a need for thousands of new jobs. Hill House Enterprise Zone should be playing a significant part in the provision of those jobs. Sadly, the reported jobs increase on Hill House was a mere 135 in a period of 7 years, a drop in the ocean from what's actually required. Is the new Hill House Enterprise Zone master plan going to address this awful performance? And is Wyre's developing economic strategy going to link closely to the developing enterprise zone master plan, ensuring joined up thinking and delivering for Wyre's willing workforce? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a very long, very productive meeting yesterday about the master plan for the enterprise zone. I'm not going to say too much about it, other than to say that I'm as disappointed as you are, Councillor Vale, with the performance of the EZ. I've made very clear previously why that is. There was a representative from Blackpool Council at the meeting who confirmed that he shared my view that it's very difficult to do the things that you need to do to actually facilitate employment and growth if you don't control the site. And we don't control the site, but what we can do and what we're going to look to do is to put levers in the master plan that will effectively reward NPL with investment in the site for jobs. So there won't be an investment by the council, there won't be the things that the NPL say they want to do and they want us to do. We won't do them just because we want to. We will only do them in the event that it leads to jobs. So if there's initial investment and the jobs don't follow, there won't be a second round. And of course, I've already congratulated Councillor Beavers. I don't offer any commiserations to Councillor Cartridge because I wouldn't want to be an MP at the minute.
Councillor Cartridge.
Are you aware that the Times recently published a league table of councils? And if so, do you know how Wyre Borough Council performs and how that compares to other councils in Lancashire?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do you know what I do? Madam Mayor, Wyre was ranked 17th of 317 councils in the country. And we are the highest ranking council in the whole of North of England. Wow. So that's something that we should be very proud of as both councillors and officers, and that's something that we need to continue. Fylde were ranked 36th, Ribble Valley were ranked 53rd. Can you spot a pattern? And then we jumped down to 80th for South Ribble, and Pendle in 308th, the other Labour leader, were within the worst 5 councils in the country. And that's with Nottingham and Birmingham and Liverpool. So they've got some really, really poor councils that they're there with. But we'll focus instead on the fact that to finish 17 out of 317, and a huge amount of that high score is because of the way we run the finances. So congratulations to Claire and her team on that front, but also planning, that was one of the key indicators. So we should be proud about that, and we shouldn't be scared to sing our own praises every now and then. Not far.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you are aware that the Fleetwood Festive Lights Committee have held a switch-on event at the Marine Hall for the past 10 years. So can you please tell me why, after all this time, £100 per hour usage charge has been put on this event?
I've got no idea, but I don't like it, so I'll look into it and we'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Councillor Lamar.
I welcome the investigation of the potential contamination as set out in point 7 of your report. Investigations in The Guardian recently revealed, a few years ago now, that certain PFAs, the highest levels, were found in the River Wyre. In point 7.4 it says sampling will take place within the vicinity of the AGC site, and I'd just like to urge that sampling also takes place on land over Wyre, which is close as the crow flies and has historic links with the previous ICI plant, including for the disposal of chemicals.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The EA are leading on this. They're the ones who are selecting the sites. They're focusing for now on the surrounding area to Hill House, but as was said in the briefing previously when a similar question was asked, they will follow the evidence. So clearly if that needs to happen, then it will happen, and if it looks to us like it should happen, then we'll push for it.
Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How important is the to Hill House and its future is the extension of the railway line to Fleetwood, which has been banded around for many months and many years by the Labour opposition, which is now just been cancelled by the Labour government?
Well, it's important to the economic growth of this borough as a whole. Across the chain, we've long supported the expansion of the railway, be it through heavy or light rail. And for the project to just have the rug pulled from under it like that overnight is very, very disappointing. It means that any development into Hill House and any transport into Hill House needs to be done by road, and one of the big barriers to Hill House developing is the road. It was one of the pretty much the only thing we spoke about at length yesterday at the meeting. So it's very disappointing to Hill House specifically, but to Wyre as a whole. Economic growth comes along with decent transport, and it just killed decent transport.
Councillor Minton.
This is a question for our council leader. On the enterprise zone, just going back to the enterprise zone, is there a fund available, did you say, to entice employment in?
So not necessarily to entice employment, but basically the way the EZs work is that when there is business rates paid onto the EZ, it goes into a pot, and we can use that pot on the EZ. So there's a reasonable amount of money, I won't say how much, that could do some good. It's not enough to build a road or a bridge or anything like that, but there's a decent pot of money for investment into the EZ. The disappointing thing, of course, is if more businesses had gone on there, that would be a bigger pot. And so it's sort of a chicken and egg situation that they're saying that you do this and then that will unlock the jobs, but we don't have the money to unlock the jobs because not enough new businesses have gone on there.
Right. Thank you very much.
Councillor Belcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to update Sir Robert that I'm very pleased to see that you're on our side with getting the train back in. I'm really pleased about it. It's not still on the table. Fleetwood line is still on the table. It has not been removed from the table. Well, I've heard it from a very good authority.
As it's my report, Madam Mayor, I'll answer that. That is not true. What you may have heard it from your sources, I don't know who they might be, but Madam Mayor, what happened was they said, we're killing all these railway projects, but we might consider individual ones. So what they've done is say, we're killing them, they are dead, but what we might do is we might revive them so that your own individual MPs has got a way of saying, they've killed all the others, but ours is going to be fine. It's not going to be fine, it's dead.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the leader's report. We'll now move on to the report of the resources portfolio holder. Councillor McKay, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report's for members. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Are there any questions or comments of Councillor McKay?
Well done.
And that concludes the considerations of the resource portfolio holder's report. And we will now move on to the report for street scenes, parks, open spaces portfolio holder. Councillor Bridge, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report's before you. If there are any questions, please ask.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your October 2023 report, you reported improved focus on the dog fouling problem with 20 fixed penalty notices handed out in the period July to mid-September. In your report in April this year, a slip was reported with only 12 dog fouling related fixed penalty notices being handed out in the period from October to March, nearly half the fixed penalty notices for a period twice as long. For the first 3 months of this financial year, it is reported that a grand total of 0 fixed penalty notices have been handed out. Para 3.2 does provide some positive news about those carrying bags and thereby having the means to pick up. But given there were no fixed penalty notices handed out, are we right to assume that nobody was found not to have a means of picking up? Irrespective of that, do you agree that the levels of dog fouling on our streets and the reduced number of dog fouling fixed penalty notices indicates that Wyre's focus on dog fouling needs to improve?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what you double negative.
It was correct.
Well, I would say that the idea of enforcement has always been to improve our environment, not to punish. And the fewer people who are obviously being caught for dog fouling, I have to say, from my own personal experience, I have to say I haven't found the streets absolutely littered with dog fouling. There is some, there always will be. When I walk my dog, there will be. But I have to say the streets seem a lot cleaner. To me, that's a win-win situation. Do you want people to leave their dog fouling on the pavement and then be fined, or would you prefer them to pick it up and take it away? We haven't put our resources elsewhere. We haven't taken our eye off the ball. I think what we've done is we've educated the public. It's the same with people throwing cigarettes or whatever else. People now realise that it's littering and you could get caught. And so therefore, as I say, this was never about a revenue raising exercise. This was about educating people or even forcing people into doing the right thing. We'll keep the streets cleaner. It's a success, it's not negative.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if there's an age and gender breakdown for the littering fines.
Under GDPR, we wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't have an officer wouldn't be able to say to somebody who they were issuing a ticket to, how old are you, whatever else. We wouldn't be allowed to do that. It would be very, I agree, it would be very interesting to see. And that's why we do have problems with younger people, because obviously we don't find anybody under the age of 18. So we have to be really careful with that. So I'm sorry, we'll go. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this does come onto, because I was looking at 2.4 and it says routine repairs and maintenance. The Garstang skateboard park, which we fought for long and hard, or will that be Lynn? Right. You're pleased about that.
It was very difficult.
No,
Lynn's a better skateboarder.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the street scene, parks and open spaces portfolio holder's report. We will now move on to the report of the planning policy and economic development portfolio holder. In the absence of Councillor Marinell, Councillor Vincent, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll answer any questions that I can. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Councillor Minton? Councillor Minton.
Has there anything fundamentally changed with the incoming of Labour as the chief planning for the country?
Well, yeah, just a bit. Obviously, the baseline figure for how many properties in Wyre that we will need to find has gone from 280 to 637 per year. We have to find sites until 2040. And the bit that I've tried to get across when I spoke to the BBC about this was that's not the end of it, because the duty to consult has become a duty to agree. And Blackpool Council in meetings have already told our officers that they will not be able to build the 500 odd and find the 500 odd houses per year to build 500 odd in Blackpool. Drive through it, there's no land. So I'm not blaming Blackpool Council for that, but they're changing the rules and say to Blackpool, if you can't build them in Blackpool, build them in Wyre and Fylde. Means they're going to have to build them in Wyre and Fylde. So while I think we won't do as badly as them, the minimum will be 6,000 between now and 2040, but I expect it to be more likely than that. Councillor Fell quoted 9,000, and for once I think he's about right. It's 9,000 houses. 9,000 extra houses between now and 2040, but it's worse than that. And the reason why it's worse than that is if you look at the data from the last local plan, the target was 350, 400 per year. Well, developers don't stagger it nicely. They go 300, 400, 750 one year, 700 the year after, and it's a rolling 5 years. So your 750 get built. So for us, your 637 get built, but they actually build 900 in 1 year. You've got another 300 to find. So that 6,000 to 9,000 houses, you've got to find sites for them. So when we went out on the old government's number of 280, which was much lower than previous figures, so I expect it to go up somewhat. I don't know where they're going to go, and ultimately, what we need to be mindful of is now, while the strings that are attached to building on the green belt thing is probably not going to happen, you're going to have 50% affordable minimum to build on the green belt. So I'm not convinced any developer is going to want to incur the cost of doing that. But basically, watch this space, Ken, because it's bad, and it's only going to get worse because there's no room to follow on it for infrastructure, for schools, for doctors, etc.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You've already answered one of our questions in the last response, but it is concerning the local plan. Obviously, the amount of houses that Labour wants us to build in Wyre, it's undoubtedly going to impact the character of the rural communities. I appreciate you might not be able to answer my question fully, but is there an inclination yet as to which options are going to be used that was in the issues and options document? Thank you.
So going into the review, we have the 8,000 or so sites that were in the plan, and the idea was we were going to consult on them and we have defined however many we were going to do the consultation, we were going to listen to residents. The answer to that, Councillor Lee, is all of them. Going to build all of them, because there's only 8,000 in there, and might need 69,000, depending on what happens elsewhere. So the idea that we could look at that and say, do we want the A6 corridor, do we want this versus them? Yeah, we want both, but we don't want both, but we're having both forced upon us. You know, the amount of development outstretched, like chances are, once you strip out the ones that aren't suitable to be developed or aren't viable to come forward, there might not even be enough sites in the consultation. So we had to receive the consultation, because if we didn't, then the plan risked, the review for the plan would have been delayed to the extent that it risked not being a fresh enough plan. So we couldn't delay the consultation to get the information out there and to do it again and look at it again, because then that opens the door to the Wild West and we can build what we want when we want. So we had to carry on with it, and unfortunately, during the course of that period, the number went from, I was in that members lounge having a conversation with the planners where they sort of said I was unrealistic when I sort of said I'd probably more than 400, and then we get 637. So, you know, we need to be honest with people and say, look, the government have the right to set the number, the government have set the number, but they need to understand that we need to make sure people are clear. We don't want this any more than they do. You know, take the development in Carlton. There's a site in that development for a school. Section 106 money goes in towards that school. It's never going to get built because LCC can't afford to build the rest of it. So until that is addressed, all these houses are going to be built and there's going to be nothing to support them. And that's not just here, that's everywhere in the country. There's no joint up thinking.
That's fair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to the local plan issues and options paper, it was right to continue Wyre's consultation. After all, the government's ongoing consultation on housing requirement is an ongoing consultation themselves. It's at the end of September it ends. So I think all these discussions about what will impact Wyre are somewhat premature. With regard to the enterprise zone master plan, it is strange that the current master plan didn't include any requirement for that rail line, and any development within the enterprise wasn't dependent on that rail line being reinstated. I sat at the cabinet meeting when that was passed, that master plan, and I said, where's all the information regarding the need for that rail line? And no one batted an eyelid. I'm sorry, this new master plan, when it comes, is an opportunity to get that in there, but let's get that in there as a council. If you all actually believe that you want a rail line, then let's get it as an absolute necessity in that master plan, and indeed in our own economic strategy, to make sure that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, because I agree, without that rail line, the numbers of jobs is significantly affected. So let's get it in that master plan for the enterprise zone, let's get it in the economic strategy, and that gives us a case to put to the government, whichever government colour it is for the government, to get that rail line reinstated ASAP. Thank you.
Good try, Rob.
Yeah.
Here.
It's true. It's true.
Right, it's about as true as the built the £22 billion black hole.
Absolutely.
The consultation may be ongoing, but just listen to the noises from government when it comes to planning. It is not a consultation that is going to be influenced by anybody. They stood on a manifesto commitment to build 1.5 million houses during the life of this parliament. They won't, because this plan will not lead to that, even if they wanted to. But they are going to push this through regardless of the sensible people making sensible comments on this plan. With regards to the EZ, way ahead of the Council for Fail, we talked at length yesterday with regards to what we can do about transport routes for the EZ. Roads was the main one, but also we are going to have conversations with Blackpool Transport and with Lancashire County Council to see what we can do on that site with regard to the acquisition of the rail line from Network Rail, now that Labour have killed heavy rail.
Absolutely.
Just to follow up to Councillor Lee's question, there were two issues in the issues and options paper. One is the spatial options, which I think Councillor Lee was referring to, with the 4 options on urban, few everywhere, whole new settlement, or A6, and then there's the site allocations, which are the ones identified on the map, which goes up towards the 6,000-7,000 mark. When you said we'll build them all, do we mean that probably we'll need all of the site allocations, or do you mean that we're considering using all of the 4 options, including a new settlement? Thank you.
There's about 8,000 sites been brought forward. They won't all be viable for various reasons, and we need to find at least 6,000. So I don't know what the consultation will say, so I'm not commenting on what the public will say. But based on what we know, by the time you strip out the ones that can't be built, and I don't know which ones they are, I don't know if the new settlement is viable, for example, it is very unlikely that anything that's not viable won't get allocated somehow with a plan between now and 2040. We have no choice.
That concludes the consideration of the planning policy and economic development portfolio holders report. We now move on to the report for the neighbourhood services and community safety portfolio holder. Councillor Berry, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as an addendum to paragraph 4.2 of the report, the Police and Crime Commissioner has launched his community fund and he's inviting bids from organisations for up to £5,000 for short-term intervention projects with a specific focus on preventing crime and ASB. The only problem is the closing date for bids is the 22nd of September. So if any organisation you know about is interested, we will have to get going straight away with that application. Otherwise, my report is before members.
Are there any questions, Councillor Berry? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the weekend of July the 11th, I received numerous phone calls regarding travellers on Jubilee Gardens. So I went down to investigate with my grandson and my dog. When I got there, I was shocked to find that the bollards on the promenade side, one of them was missing. While I was there, I witnessed a car travelling at 20 miles an hour right next door to the slides, past me 3 times, go out onto the road, come back, go out, come back, go out, come back. They were obviously doing the shopping. Now, the problem I had is, I rang up the duty officer and I also rang the police. Because the bollard wasn't there, that was their way in and out of the promenade road. So could I ask the portfolio holder that in future, them bollards are in place 365 days a year to stop this sort of thing happening? Thank you.
Can you just clarify to me where you mean the bollard? I'm not quite clear.
Where the Sorry, Councillor Berry. Where the promenade is,
Yeah.
where our little car park is adjacent.
Jubilee car park?
No, next door to Jubilee car park, there are 2 bollards.
Right.
And on the morning of the 11th of July, one of them was not put up. So the cars were coming in and out, and that's how they got the caravans onto the park, right next door to the children's slides.
Yeah.
And it was very dangerous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Usually, I mean, this is dealt with by our engineering section. Who
I did ring the duty officer.
Yeah, who usually sort of do attend to put in these mechanisms in our car parks and things like that to prevent travellers and other unauthorised persons going in. So I'll put the message across that that is an area they're going to have to watch in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Berry, just to continue on from the one for Dr Neil, I'd like to ask about Section 3. Whilst on police, this council is finally alerting residents of Wyre to possible environmental health concerns within the borough, I find myself disappointed by the lack of details in regards to how we are planning to monitor the site and what enforcement measures we will take. What actions will this council take should the land users of the Jameson landfill site continue to fail to meet health and safety standards, and why this has not been communicated to residents? Thank you.
I think the enforcement action we've taken is by way of close working with the Environment Agency, who, as you know, have issued an enforcement notice on Transways, who are operating this site. And I think it's been the best way of getting this issue sorted out. It's taken time, but I think if another route, like going through court proceedings had been undertaken, it would have taken a longer period of time to get the issue sorted out. It's been carried out within certainly about 4 to 5 months. We hoped it would be a bit quicker, but now I think the operator has got the message that they've got to do things right. I did have a visit along with Councillor Rendell to the site, and we were shown the work that had been done there. It seemed obvious to us that a job had been done which looked professional, and they are laying out a new cell for depositing waste in, and it looked as if they were taking every measure that could be taken to make sure that it would operate properly. So we're hoping that there won't be the sort of issues and problems that we've had in the past, that the lesson has been learned, but obviously we will be carefully monitoring the site, as will the EA. The EA are not giving up, we are not giving up, and we've held community meetings. We had one last week, which was very useful. We did cover a lot of issues, including health issues, and whilst one of the experts did say that they didn't consider there was an issue to the general public on health issues, it was recognised at that meeting that certain people, especially those who had existing conditions, those that had disabilities and couldn't get out, and other people were being affected by mental issues because they were upset by the whole situation. So it has affected certain groups of people, and we hope very much that the agencies, the health agencies, will take that on board and try and help those people. But we will be monitoring the situation as it develops.
Thank you. Councillor Fair.
Mine's a quick one. May I?
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today I was approached yet again by a business owner in Fleetwood who has repeatedly reported to Wyre Council and not had a response regarding parking issues, where it's supposed to be 1 hour parking and people parking there all day. His business is suffering because of it. Am I asking the right person, firstly? And secondly, can anything be done?
I don't know which area you're talking about. So
it's Ward Street.
On Street.
It's actually on street parking.
Well, the county won't it?
Is that county? Right, I'll get on to county. He's had no response from Wyre though, that upset me.
Well, I think you get a quicker response if you go to the county.
No problem, I'll email him in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fair, do you have a question?
Yeah, just following on from Dr. Neil's question before, you said that there was a permit was given to Transwaste by an environment agency, and I think it was a reasonable question for Dr. Neil to ask if the environment agency, or indeed Wyre as the landowner, had done an environmental impact assessment. So I think the council, all councillors should know whether that environmental impact assessment has been done or not. Thank you.
I think this question should be directed at the EA, to be quite honest, because when they give a permit, they must take in all those things into account. You know, what may be happening in the future. That's their job. Otherwise, they shouldn't have given that permit, which they have given.
With the landowner.
But it does, that is the fact. They've got a permit to do it from the EA, and that is the fact.
The HSE wouldn't let them do it. They wouldn't let them go ahead. You've got to do the risk assessment.
Environmental impact assessment.
Yeah.
I just think we need a definitive answer. Anyway.
No, I think they should have done that. I would have thought that was part of their job.
I think.
Next week.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the neighbourhood services and community service portfolio. We'll now on to the report for leisure, health and community engagement portfolio holder. Councillor Bowen, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report before you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Councillor Bowen? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Fleetwood Town Council would like to pass on our thanks to the team for helping them with the D-Day celebrations. That was on the Fleetwood Memorial Park, put on by the Fleetwood Town Council. If you could just pass our thanks for supporting them and helping us with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pass those on, but the team have done a fantastic job this year. It's so busy doing all these events. It's been absolutely blown out, and also the fact they've been so successful as well. So
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since May, there has been a further 6 police forces that have opened cases relating to malpractice in the funeral industry. Allegations relating to ashes going missing, families given the wrong remains, illegal storage of bodies and financial misconduct. Please can you assure me that all possible safeguards have been put in place in Wyre to prevent this in order to protect grieving loved ones?
Yes, a horrendous situation, but the officers, environment officers have actually been all the funeral directors in Wyre, and they're quite happy that there's no incidents or they've been open and transparent so that the public's got plenty of confidence in them. And also the funeral directors in Wyre are they're all members of the Society of Allied Independent Funeral Directors and the National Association of Funeral Directors. And these associations go and inspect every year and do an audit every year. So, they kept up to date with anything that's happened. So they're quite happy. There's 16 funeral directors and there's only 12 sites. Some have got 2 sites, some share sites with other people. But everything is up to scratch.
Thank you. Councillor Jackins.
I was going to say thank you actually, because in July when I was down at the skateboard park, not taking any part in it, I noticed that the workmen were removing 2 pieces of equipment. And so I'd asked, and apparently because, they're about 20 years old, to be fair to them, they've been well used, but 2 of them actually are made of wood, and that was getting rotten. But the reason why it was getting rotten was because there were sandbags underneath which had got saturated with all the bad weather we've had of late. So they had to remove them. But I've been informed that these pieces are going to be replaced, so thank you very much for that, because it is a well-used area. And it's a delight to see little youngsters trying there as well as a slightly old person, but not me. So thank you.
And I agree that nothing was worse than broken equipment. So Mark Bennington showed me that we're looking at the whole of that site. Different options.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Hello, thank you, Madam Mayor. A little bit of community feedback from Poulton. Again, good news for you. Many thanks to the Healthy Lifestyle team who worked alongside the Hope Community Care Hub with the holiday lunch scheme, providing over 500 lunches and 200 breakfasts, and people were very, very appreciative of it. So thank you very much indeed from Poulton Ward.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The point 2.5, I would just like to endorse the comments that are already in your report, Councillor Bowen. The event on Cotton Hall playing fields, the Wonderland, was absolutely fantastic. It was so well organised. Not only was the event in itself good, but the actual organisation and the information that was given to residents beforehand ensured that there were no complaints, as I'm aware of, during the event. It all went so smoothly, and I'd just like to congratulate the team again on their work. Thank you.
Yeah, there's something. I didn't actually go.
Yes, sir.
I didn't actually go myself, but I have had feedback. It's a fantastic day, and it's going to get even bigger next year.
No, I believe so, yeah.
This Leslie time you said.
We just went on that island next door, and we had absolutely no complaints. It was
Yeah. Well, we only live a few metres away, and yes, it was excellent, wasn't it? And I did attend on the day, and yes, it was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holders Report. Now is the opportunity for members of the Cabinet to make comments or ask questions on the report of their colleagues. Do Cabinet members wish to do so?
Yeah.
Councillor Linton.
just want to ask Councillor Berry a question. As Councillor Berry will be aware, Wyre Council are the landowner of the Jameson Road site. We granted a lease to a former tenant, and their licence to use that site for waste and for landfill is granted by the Environment Agency, and I believe that the LCC grant all the licences that they require. This council doesn't issue any of those licences. We have no statutory obligations, we have no dealings with it. Yes, we own the land, but we granted a lease, as Councillor Berry is aware, to a former tenant, and that lease was then assigned. We did all the relevant checks, and we had an obligation to be reasonable, so we took reasonable steps, having taken external legal advice on this. Madam Mayor, does the portfolio holder agree with me that the representatives of the people of Fleetwood should start being honest with the residents, rather than continuing to feed the narrative that the council is in any way responsible for the awful smell of Jameson Road?
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem has been that the previous operative didn't use the site like they had the licence for quite some time. Unfortunately, people didn't realise that landfill site was in existence. With Transwaste coming on the scene, they are now operating on that site, and obviously this has caused problems, mainly because I think they broke into an old cell and didn't realise the implications of doing so and how to deal with it. Unfortunately, through the Environment Agency, they have corrected the situation, but we are bound by the terms of the licence issued by the EA. They are independent of us. We have no authority over them to that extent. We can consult with them, but they have issued the licence. There is planning permission given by Lancashire County Council for that site, and obviously as occupier of the site, we have to monitor the situation, and that's what we do, but we have no direct control over the day-to-day running. We will monitor it and work to endeavour that the site is operated correctly, but at the end of the day, we are very much dependent on the EA keeping an eye on that site.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of executive reports. We will now move on to agenda item 8, Treasury Management Outturn Report. Councillor McKay, would you please introduce the report and propose a recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to introduce the report and propose a recommendation. Take any comments or questions.
Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Councillor McKay is a proposer of the recommendation. Would you please respond to any questions?
No, more than that.
I know. That concludes the debate. Would members please now vote on the recommendation? Those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. The recommendation is approved. The next item is item 9, appointments to committees and lead member roles. Councillor Linton, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to propose the report, and how great it is to see Andrea that well and not to sit on committees.
Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Would members please vote now on the recommendation? All those. The recommendation is approved. The next item is item 10, the process for appointing the mayor. Councillor Linton, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the report. We had a productive meeting myself with Councillor Fayol, the Chief Executive and the officers, where I think we agreed this was a better system than what was there immediately before this one. I know we have differences on what an ideal situation would be, but I think this is a better system than the one it's replacing.
Can I have a second to the proposal, please?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Barry. Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Councillor Stevenson.
I'm obliged to you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Vincent, I didn't quite just catch what you just said there. I obviously might need an hearing aid, but we'll get that on the national, I hope. Now we've got the new government in. Right then, where am I up to? Yes, here we are. I'd like to hear something from you, straight from the horse's mouth, if you like. You know, the old system, which was plucked out the air, because you got to find an answer to something which you didn't have an answer to, obviously. You've set out all the, very comprehensively, you've set out all the background to it. Of course, as we all know, previously, before we had the problems of people not coming forward who were senior for the position, you know, we always had it. It was always no politics. It was always the senior member, the most senior member who was available. Now you say here that we're going to have a discussion about it, and that I assume that's when the time will come and you will lay out what the policies are for the mayoral candidates, if there are more than one, of how they will respond. For instance, will they be asked to come in front of this council and give a statement? Or will it just be a matter of a nod, proposer and seconder, and so forth? Now the more senior and more serious part of it, Sir Michael, is and some of our group are a bit concerned that this, and I am, that this may be made political, and it's never been political before. In all my time on council, I've always supported mayors, whatever party they was from, their election. We'll just considering what to say next. But
is there a question, Councillor Stevenson? Is there a
I'll
question?
get there eventually. Will you be putting a whip on when it comes in front of this council? Will the Conservative group be whipped into voting after the candidates have been presented to the council? Will you be putting a whip on to say that who they should vote for? Or will it be left to a free vote of the council? That is the question. I hope you're going to answer it, well, you know, but are you going to give us some promises like are they going to be kept? And now's your chance. Okay, thanks. I'm waiting.
Well, no, like Keir Starmer, I keep my promises. I've been the leader of this council and of the Conservative group since December 2022, and there's never once been a whip. So I can assure Councillor Stevenson I won't be whipping the group with the mayor, or the whip, or the group with the mayoralty vote. There'll be a proposal and second if during conversations between the three group leaders that we can settle on a person who is a suitable person to be mayor, then there may only be one proposal. If there's more than one proposal, then there will be a vote. Ours would be a free vote, although we expect it to go on party lines because that's what people typically do. With regards to making it political, it's not political, Councillor Stevenson, we as a council have an obligation to make sure that these meetings can be conducted in a way that means that the business of this council can be affected, and we are not satisfied that somebody would be able to conduct the meetings in that way or would choose not to conduct the meetings in that way, and I personally couldn't support them if I felt they would do that.
Quite a vague answer, that.
Pretty specific to me.
Having closed the debate, would members please now vote on the recommendation? Will those in favour please show? That's unanimous. The recommendation is approved. The next item is item 11, Constitution Amendments. Councillor Vincent, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's lots of full members have to take any questions.
Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Would members please now vote on the recommendations? All those in favour, please show. Recommendation is approved. The next item is item 12, LJ Corporate Peer Challenge. Councillor Vincent, would you please introduce the report?
Madam Mayor, just scrolling. The LGA peer review was something that I have to say I had been involved previously, but only a chair of open spirit and didn't really know what to expect from it. And it was actually it's very useful. We were asked some challenging questions, some difficult questions. We were asked, they spoke to infinite amount of people, and ultimately we've come up with an assessment of this council which is very positive. It felt at times like they were perhaps looking to find fault to pick, and some of their criticisms, we'll look at them, as we said we would, and we will consider our position on them, but some of them they were sort of picking fault where there was none, particularly when it comes to some of the issues with regards to our approach to risk and such things, but generally speaking it's incredibly positive, and just like the time ranking for the 17th in the country, this is a very, very, very good report. We do often get good reports from the LGA. We've had a peer challenge in the past, but your members just need to look at what some of our other authorities in Lancashire, what theirs have said. They do not read like this, they just don't. So again, members, officers, all others should be really proud of this and have to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions about the report, please? Councillor Peck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we should all thank all who took part in this exercise. It has given the council plenty to reflect on, both good and not so good. Now it's time for positive change. With a document, it's often not what's present in it, it's what's missing that is of most importance. It's probably the same with cabinet meetings. I've been perplexed by about the length of cabinet meetings since I joined the council. Very rarely are they longer than 10 minutes.
Well done.
Participation by the opposition is actively discouraged through archaic practices. Opposition councillors are meant to seek permission prior to the meeting in order to speak. Nor are councillors encouraged to attend what is in effect a rubber stamping exercise of decisions already made outside the cabinet meeting. What is needed are cabinet meetings that are open and transparent, that result in discussion and debate and are not a foregone conclusion. As part of a required change, I welcome the report's findings with regard to the need for Cabinet to receive quarterly financial and performance reports. And I also welcome the report's findings to implement a clear strategy to maximise the potential of its assets. The Labour Group has been saying for some time it should be making better use of its huge reserves and improving the lives of its residents. The Council needs to acknowledge the known deprivation and begin to formally tackle these issues, making use of its reserves. For example, this Council could quite easily use some of its reserves to buy up dilapidated houses, employ local people to do those houses, and get those houses back into use, providing families and elderly residents across the borough with improved accommodation and improved standards of living. And here's the thing, at no cost to this council, it's just using money that would otherwise just sit there in the bank in case of a rainy day. To conclude, I'd ask, when is this council going to speculate to accumulate and remove its tag of being cautious and having a low risk appetite? Improving lives through investment should be this council's #1 goal.
I take real issue with the suggestion from Councillor Fale, who admitted at the last cabinet meeting that I had never once required a Labour member or any member who didn't want to attend cabinet to take part in the meeting. At the last cabinet meeting, I allowed him to attend and not only comment on minutes, but comment on minutes for a meeting he wasn't even at, right? I still allowed him the opportunity to do that, and I have never ever deprived anybody who has attended cabinet of the opportunity to speak.
Change the constitution then.
Madam, secondly, when it comes to the length of cabinet meetings, it's because they don't turn up.
It's your responsibility, you're the leader.
The purpose of cabinet meetings is for us to make decisions. The idea that we're going to write decisions and discuss them and agree them during a public meeting is bonkers. You're just never going to do it. You sit there and we're going to write them by hand while we're actually having the conversation. Does anybody think that will lead to good policy? Madam Mayor, our reserves are currently at a reasonable level, but we have a Labour government, and what we know is that changes are coming with regards to council tax, but what we also know is that they are probably going to, or they certainly haven't ruled out, scrapping single person's discount. So with that, on the face of it, will mean more money for the council. Except I don't think we're going to be able to keep it if they do that, and actually we'll have more residents who are unable to pay their council tax. We're going to have more residents who we need to help because they're going to be cold in the winter, so we need to reassess the way we do the healthy fund. So we've got all these things on the horizon. Right now is not the time for us to start buying housing, right? Most councils that have housing stocks want rid of them because they are a huge liability. Now is not the time for us to start buying them. We've got some monies in our part from Section 106 where we are buying up empty properties, and that's a good scheme because we're going to sell them, right? And we're going to sell them as affordable houses. But we should not be getting into the market as being a landlord now. It would be the wrong decision. If, as we were all promised, Labour are going to find loads of money and our position is going to be better, because for years we've been moaning about conservative austerity, so now Starmer's austerity is in, sure we're going to get loads of extra money. So if that money materialises and our financial position changes and our medium-term financial plan changes, we would love to start spending money, but it will not be on becoming a landlord.
Thank you. The report is noted. The next item is item 13, Climate Change Strategy and Action Plans 24 to 2035. Councillor Bitter, would you please introduce the report and propose a recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's worth just taking a step back and just think about the achievement that this is, the piece of work that this is. Sammy is an absolutely fantastic officer. The amount of work that she has done on this is phenomenal. You know, to the point where other councils are literally trying to borrow her from us because they don't even know where to start with this, and we're bringing this plan to full council. So while it's clearly going to be a living document, because what we know about climate change, what we know about carbon emissions, and what we know, and the cost of dealing with them changes all the time, to be able to bring this forward now is a fantastic achievement in itself, and we should be proud of that. But there's not time for us to pat ourselves on the back. The next step of this, through Sir Robert's committee, is to make sure that we are looking all the time at where we can reduce our carbon emissions as a council in a way that's affordable and sustainable. I'm happy to propose a report on that.
Thank you. Is there a second for the proposal?
I'll second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Are there any comments, questions, or anything? Councillor Rushworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Climate Change strategy and action plan. If you refer to subsection risks to Wyre page 14, there's a comment there by Sir James Bevan, Chief Executive of the Environment Agency, who comments that it is inevitable that some of our communities will have to move back from the coast. Will this have some weight when allocation of development sites is considered?
Flood risk definitely does. Unfortunately, where planning seems to sit in isolation from common sense. So while you've obviously got flood risk zones, my understanding, and I'm not an expert, you'd probably be better off just asking Steve Smith directly, but my understanding of where we are now is we look at the flood risk for how it is now, and things like coastal erosion, for example, don't necessarily come into consideration for allocations of site, because this government and previous governments have just been desperate to get houses built. So there's no joined up thing.
I know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for such an excellent report and welcome the commitment to monitor and improve air quality across the borough. Note the proposal to revoke air quality management zone in Poulton, that's good news that it's improved, and request regular reviews of whether future zones are needed, particularly in light of the proposed quarry in Pre-Zone.
None of the side.
And that concludes the debate. Would members please now vote on the recommendation? One more question? Sorry. You have to, sorry.
Oh, what?
We're voting.
Recommendation is approved. The next item is item 14, periodic report, climate change lead member. Councillor Sir Robert Atkins, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make, if I may, 4 quick points. First of all, though, I would like to endorse what Councillor Vincent said about Sally Gray. She is an exceptional officer and she has served our subcommittee, policy subcommittee, and now our climate change subcommittee with great skill, and I would endorse that. 4 quick points then, if I may. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all the members of the new subcommittee on climate change, particularly my Deputy Chairman, Councillor Baxter, and if I may say so, Councillor Fale, the Leader of the Opposition, in that we have tried to make it as non-partisan as we possibly can because of the importance of some of the issues that have been raised, and I am grateful to all the members who participated in that. The second point that I would make is, as colleagues will expect, we are but a small cog in a quite substantial wheel, if I can put it that way. We have a role to play as a borough, but we have to work closely with both the county council on things like recycling and recharging of batteries and so on, as well, of course, as the government, who have given us the lead in this. And whilst we can do things and are doing things and putting recommendations forward, such as the report we just discussed, the fact remains is that we are greatly dependent on the county and the government in that respect. Third point I make, Madam Mayor, is we discussed briefly earlier, and this is not a party political point, although I could make it if I wanted to, but in terms of the development requirement under the new government's plans to triple the house building in the borough, will have ramifications in terms of wildlife, green spaces, infrastructure support, and so on. And I do hope that the planning policy group, chaired by someone who I know slightly, and also the planning committee, will give urgent consideration to the ramifications of that development in terms of what effect it will have upon the whole of the borough. Final point in this respect, Madam Mayor, is this. It's quite easy if you are a new developer, as Councillor Baxter tells us periodically, to do what is required in terms of climate change in construction. And we can pressurise them through the planning committee and all the rest of it. But as we are told frequently and quite rightly on this issue, if not other, by Councillor Fale and other members, the body of the properties that we have in the borough, like every other borough, are much older than the new developments that we consider on a day-to-day basis. And there's a hell of a lot to do to make sure that people are aware of what is going on, how they themselves can do something about it, and above all, how the county and particularly the government can give us more of a lead and more support, either financially or in policy terms, to encourage people to pursue those courses of action. This is a huge issue, as we've all said across the board for many months since we discussed it originally. As I say, I'm grateful to colleagues for taking the view that they have, and I'm more than happy to take comments or questions if members wish to do so.
Are there any questions for Councillor Robert Wilkins?
I'm not going to make it political.
Very important message. The next item is item 15, notices of motion. We have two notices of motion this evening. First is a notice of motion submitted by Councillors Berry, Vincent, Bridge and Amos, which is set out in full at page 309 of your agenda. Councillor Berry, would you please propose the motion? You have a maximum of 5 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Although the government has obtained a majority in the House of Commons to go ahead with the proposal to means test and in reality restrict the winter fuel allowance to pensioners on pension credit, this is an issue that won't go away, and the government continues to receive criticism in the press, TV and media, including from charities and trade unions. As a high percentage of our residents are pensioners or approaching pensionable age, I think it's important that we debate this motion and give a message to government. As the motion states, over 27,000 of our pensioners have had their winter fuel allowance removed by the government. Some of these are entitled to pension credit but have not claimed. Others are quite well off, but the vast majority have to take great care in managing their financial budgets, and this will become more difficult when energy prices go up by £100 as predicted, and then lose also the winter fuel allowance. The winter fuel allowance was introduced in 1998 by Gordon Brown, so pensioners have become reliant on this additional income that's been paid for the last 25 years. In this area where we live, we all know that winter comes early and lasts well into the new year. It can be cold, wet, and the wind chill reduces temperatures even further. For a pensioner, it means keeping warm all the hours of the day and in the evening until you go to bed. And for those with disabilities and illnesses, they need the heating on for 24 hours a day. I also believe this will have a psychological effect on many pensioners who will feel they can't afford to keep the heating on when they should. This could very well lead to many more suffering from hypothermia and chest infections and put further pressure on GPs and our hospitals, which in turn will mean that younger people will have to wait longer for treatment and operations as hospital beds will be filled. Any savings the government hope to make will be taken up by demands on the NHS. As a council, we will increase our efforts to get as many people as we can to claim the state benefits they are entitled to. Our disabled facilities grant team already has a fine record in achieving this. But for the moment, I hope this motion will find the support of all councillors as it is couched in terms that should be acceptable in urging the government to think again. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Vincent, I understand you second the motion.
Yes, we do like to speak on that.
Would any members who wish to speak for or against the motion or to propose an amendment, please do it and indicate you have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The government has to deal with what's in front of them. The country needs to turn a new leaf after some terrible decisions by successive governments. Austerity negatively impacted the most vulnerable in society. Trust was responsible for a calamitous collapse in the economy. And well, COVID was just an opportunity for the unscrupulous to remove tens of billions of pounds of taxpayers' money from government coffers. No, absolutely true.
You're right.
The black hole in the economy needs fixing. There is lots to put right if public services are to get to where they need to be. And if it were me, my port of call would be to recover the billions stolen from the public purse. There's no doubt winter fuel does need reforming. In fact, along with pension credit, it and the Christmas bonus, ultimately they should go, paving way for a pension system that actually pays people what they need and not having to rely on top-up payments, including from household support funds, and certainly not having to rely on food banks. It is time it was reformed, with use of income tax to ensure money goes predominantly where it's needed most. People don't like handouts, as evidenced by the pension credit take-up. Although the wish to reform winter fuel is a reasonable one, it would appear the impact has not been sufficiently thought through. It is fairly evident a full impact assessment on pensioners needs to be undertaken, and for the detail of any reform to then be reconsidered. As Labour Group leader, you might be disappointed that actually I'm happy to call for a rethink, but the motion would benefit from some rewording. The use of the word decision seems somewhat final, and I'm far from sure that it's correct. It's true that there's been a Commons vote on the plans, but there's still time for amendments to those plans, and nobody has had their winter fuel payment removed at this point. Without undertaking a full impact assessment, it is impossible to state how many Wyre pensions would be at risk if this proposal were implemented. Some more generic wording would aid the motion wording. And finally, the last paragraph says to check their availability. It is assumed that that was meant to read eligibility. The Labour Group therefore puts forward a revised motion, which hopefully Democratic Services are sending to members now via email, and if there are any some written with printed ones, then I'm sure they are available to members. But I shall read out the amendment anyway. This council disagrees with the proposal by the government to introduce means testing of winter fuels payment without first completing a full impact assessment. The current proposal risks placing many Wyre pensioners into fuel poverty and causing them significant financial hardship. This council calls on the leader of the council, leader of the opposition, and the leader of the independents to write to the Chancellor urging a full impact assessment to be undertaken, allowing the reconsideration of the proposal, ensuring every pensioner deemed to be in poverty retains their winter fuel payment. This is to ensure that vulnerable pensioners, particularly those that do not claim pension credit, are protected from the financial hardship. This council notes that many pensioners eligible for pension credit do not apply for it and will lose their entitlement to a winter fuel payment as a result. Therefore, we resolve to undertake an awareness campaign to encourage residents in Wyre to check their eligibility to pension credit and claim where appropriate. Thank you.
I'd like to second that, please.
Rebecca Nicholson,
I
please
reserve the right to
advise
speak.
on whether or not the amendment is valid.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one step ahead, yes, it's a valid amendment.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Yes, I'd like to second that amendment. Please reserve the right to speak.
Do any others wish to speak for or against the amendment? You will have 5 minutes, Councillor. Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought we already had a full impact assessment. Your colleagues a couple of years ago said it would be 4,000 deaths from cutting winter fuel allowance. Was that just pulled out of the air, or was that an impact assessment?
We need a full impact assessment now.
Oh, so 2 years ago it would be 4,000 deaths, but now it's not. 4,000 deaths are irrelevant.
I never said that. Behave.
In 2021 there were 27,000 pensioners in Wyre. There are now 30,000 according to your own data, so changes it needs doing now.
Councillor Stevenson.
Me?
That's you. Excuse me, don't call me moron. Thank you. It's about respect in here, remember what we said? Using the word moron is not right. Thank you, grow up.
Okay, Councillor Stevenson, next question.
I'm obliged to you. Well, I'm going to question. Obviously, I'm going to make a comment as well, which is, I believe, my right to do so. My first observation is, you know, I've listened to the crocodile tears over there, and you know, it's almost had me crying in my beer. Fortunately, I don't drink these days, so I won't be doing that. What we're talking about here is 80p per day. That's for people who are on get the 300. Now, Councillor Fale has just got it very gentlemanly. You know, he hasn't put the vote in, but I feel like doing so. I may well do as I carry on talking. You never know. I do notice one thing, Councillor Berry, that you don't say it should be scrapped or anything. You don't want it to, you know, you want it to sort of continue. But what you want is you want it to be tinkered with. You know, you want to be able to, you know, say you don't want to offend the better off pensioners who get it, and there are a lot of them. I'm better off and I got it, but I can do without it. They vote Conservative, and you don't want to offend them. That's what it is. That's why you're not prepared to say it should be scrapped. You only want to tinker with it. I think this amendment, this motion is, it stinks of humbug and hypocrisy. It's blaming somebody else for years of your government's austerity. You've had more cuts during those years than you have in butchers' shops. And yeah, that's true. And you're behaving like headless chickens, stunned by the tsunami defeat you've just suffered at the hands of the Labour Party. 172, I think the majority was, you know, and I can understand what to do very deflated. So you've got to come up with something. You've got to. It's an empty gesture. It's empty rhetoric, and it reminds me of the American politicians. There was two of them, Democrats, and I think we had an argument, and one said to the other, he said, you know what you remind me of with your policy? You remind me of somebody who's got a hamburger bap or a beef burger bap full of onions, but where's the beef?
Councillor Stevenson, can we just ask you to wrap it up, please, if you've got something that you wish to add to the debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll carry on. Right, full of onions without the beef, and that's what it is. It's just got no standing at all. There's nothing there. It's just words. It's ill thought out, and I would be voting obviously with my party. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The issue with the amendment is that, and then what? So we have a full impact assessment, and as regardless of the backwards and forwards that's just happened, regardless of anything that's been said, Councillor Foote is correct that the Labour Party claimed to have done an impact assessment. And what Councillor Belshaw says as well, there are more pensioners in Wyre now. So if what they're saying is correct, and years of Tory rule has meant that there's more people in poverty and there's more pensioners, surely there are more pensioners in poverty who don't receive pension credit. So therefore this is going to have a bigger impact than it would then. So those 4,000 deaths will be a bigger figure. Logic suggests
14 years of Tory rule.
So that there has been an impact assessment, or if there hasn't been an impact assessment, that's an admission that the Labour government have not considered this at all or properly and not done anything before they thought this through. So what we are calling for is we're calling for them to reverse this decision. Clearly, if a government chooses to scale back winter fuel payments in a way that will make sure that people who need it, not just those on pension credits, those who need it, that is their right. But this approach is the wrong approach, and there is not time to do a full assessment and come up with a revised policy between now and when the pensioners in Wyre, 27,000 pensioners in Wyre, need it. If you are on the state pension, this is 3% of your pension. 3% of it, that's a lot. There are pensioners in Wyre who are concerned by this. So while I am pleased that Councillor Fowler suggested that Labour will support the idea of the winter fuel allowance being maintained for now, it just needs to be maintained until this policy is thought through properly, and therefore I don't think that the amendment is one that we should support, and I would call to move to the vote on that.
Of course you don't.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only issue I can see with it, and I think Councillor Vincent has indeed just answered it, when you start asking for impact assessments, you are delaying something, and winter is coming on. So there's a lot of similarity, but that impact assessment does bother me in terms of time. Thank you.
Councillor McKay.
I'm sorry, I was just reiterating that point. Actually, we've got our older generation now are panicking now, and now is when we're starting to turn the heating on, and I don't want to see any of those people in hospitals behind time.
Councillor Belshaw, do you have anything to add?
Yes. In 1997, one of the first things the Labour government did was introduce the winter fuel payments to all our pensioners. Back then, after 18 years of Conservative rule, a higher number of pensioners than people of working age were in poverty. This is no longer correct. In financial terms, over a quarter of pensioners previously receiving the winter fuel allowance now have a wealth of over £1 million. Half of a wealth of £500,000, and a fifth have an income of over 41,600. These are facts on the government website. Given the financial mess the government has been left with, can we not all agree that this means testing is necessary and all that's required is the hack? The idea of means testing winter fuel payments was originally introduced in 2017 by Mrs May. She then won the election to become Prime Minister. Why were the issues okay then but they're not now? Kemi Badenoch tried it in her 2022 campaign. She failed. Do you wonder if she failed because a majority of the MPs were actually in receipt of the benefit? A state pension is £221.20. Pension credit is £218.15. The difference for a 66-year-old is £158.60 a year. The government needs to undertake a full impact assessment to ensure those margins are not left behind, with some pensioners receiving the winter fuel payment and some not, even though their overall income is at a similar level. Surely after supporting the residents through 14 years of diabolical previous government, Wyre Council could find a way to support those only on the state pension, with the £41.40 per annum for those aged 66 to 80, or £141.40 per annum for those aged over 80, to bring them in line with those on pension credit, using the Household Support Fund, and ensure that all those entitled to, but not in receipt of pension credit, have all the help they need to apply.
Councillor Fowler, so proposal of the member, please respond to the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't say very much on this other than just to conclude that we are on roughly the same page on this, but an impact assessment hasn't been done in full now, and that is the point. And if we do ask for that impact assessment, it might delay it. And that's good news, delaying it, because that means that the people this year will receive their winter fuel payment. It needs to be correct. I would urge members to all support this now. Thank you.
Move the votes.
Now move to the vote on the amendment. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Oh, sorry.
Against the amendment. I can't think this is for the amendment. This is for. Is this
For the amendment.
Those against?
Tories, the independents. Independent Tories.
Any abstentions? The amendment's lost, so we will therefore continue to the original motion.
Councillor is correct, it should be eligibility, not availability, but can I ask that is correct rather than amend it?
Twice.
Any further comments? Councillor Bale?
I explained the reason to change the wording and we've chosen to reject that. If the Conservative group generally want to have a joint challenge to the proposal, then you really should be receptive to a jointly agreed set of words. Not do so would make it look like the Conservative group are playing party politics. So rather than that, I would suggest this council comes up with a form of words that are factually correct and more in keeping with what is actually required, i.e. full impact assessment and reconsideration.
Councillor Berry, is the proposal of the motion? Councillor Vincent.
Madam Mayor, I don't believe that we need to amend the motion to achieve what Councillor Fale has suggested, but if Councillor Fale, when I write to the Government and Chancellor, would like me to ask for a full impact assessment, having scrapped the policy to scrap it, and then looked at it next year to do a full impact assessment as part of what they do instead, I am happy to include that in the letter.
Move the vote then.
Thank you. Councillor Berry, as a proposal, would you please respond to the
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, when I made this proposal, this motion, I felt it was couched in terms that could be acceptable to all councillors, and as I didn't want it to be turned into a party political discussion. No, I didn't. I think our residents and our pensioners in particular are entitled to better orders than having a skirmish over this about what's happened in the past. It's a present issue. Many of our pensioners are genuinely worried. That worry is increased because the fact is the Prime Minister has refused even to rule out the possibility of the single occupant resident 25% allowance on council tax. He's refused to rule that out, and it's increasing the issues and problems for our residents. The worries are there. We need this sorting out immediately, and this is why I'm urging the government to immediately rethink this, to be quite honest, and I put the motion to councillors, and I hope that they will favourably accept it.
That concludes the debate, so we'll move on to the vote. Will those in favour of the motion please show? Those against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Now, The second notice of motion was submitted by Councillors Vincent, Cartridge, Bowen and McKay. It's also set out at page 309 of your agendas. Councillor Vincent, would you propose the motion, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes to do so?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've talked about this already quite a bit tonight, so I'm not going to say too much. Ultimately, Madam Mayor, the petition, Council of Fylde in particular, including the last cabinet meeting, have long expressed the view that we were building too many houses in Wyre, 300 to 400 houses per year under the targets, previous targets, without jobs in Wyre to stop people commuting in and out, etc., and the infrastructure to support it. Just like when you expressed those views last time when the local plan came to full council, when you implement policies the government set, it's too late. It is too late to do anything about them at that point. We have to implement them. So actually what we need to do now as a council is stand up and say that the change to Wyre's number is utterly out of keeping with what this area can support. The increase in number is utterly out of keeping with what this council with this area can support, both in terms of schools and doctor surgeries and all those other things. We've had the biggest increase, percentage-wise, of anywhere in Lancashire, and it's because of this really strange metric we've used with regard to property values and all the rest of it. There's no consideration about where the housing is really needed or what type of housing, etc. It's just a bit of maths, that's how many houses you're getting. It's not gone up to the same extent in areas around London and Manchester and Leeds, where there's surely a greater demand and they've spent billions on infrastructure over the years, and it's just not very well thought out. So what we're saying is, don't do it and think again, because this council resolved on the 6th of July 2023 that we didn't support any change of policy that could risk development on the Greenbelt. So under the current local plan, we shouldn't have to build anything or allow any development on the Greenbelt. But if they build above the numbers that are going into this plan, we've got more sites to find, it is almost certain that the next plan will have to allow development on the Greenbelt. So basically, we've already resolved to approve this.
Councillor Cartridge, I understand you're going to second the motion.
I'd like to second that, thank you, Madam Mayor, and also reserve the right to speak.
Would any members who wish to speak for or against the motion or to propose an amendment please indicate in your Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must admit, when I heard the amount of housing that we were going to have to be building in our borough, it really shocked me. We've spoken about climate change. We've got a big development happening in Napely at the moment, and because we refused it as a planning committee, it went to the inspector, and the inspector has overruled on the TPOs of the trees, mature, wonderful trees, and these are being pulled down, or have been pulled down. Cut down. Well, yeah, cut down. And the same with this hedge, it's just been annihilated. And there was one wonderful, quite large oak tree on one site, which you saw. And to be fair to Ryan Arrow, he did his very best to try and save it, but that has been taken down because, otherwise they couldn't build 2 or 3 houses on that site. The effect it's going to have on our climate is going to be quite devastating around the country. And don't forget, we have a huge floodplain. We're not going to be able to build on that. So Garstang, Poulton, Great Eccleston and all these other places are going to have to take the brunt of that building, per building. Talking to our doctor, he said we just don't know how it's going to cope. So, is this going to be sorted? Because it always infuriates me that you don't have the infrastructure put in first and then the building. And the Conservatives were to blame for that as well. But all governments don't seem to have taken that into consideration. Our schools are full. I don't know, we were going to have a school down Cotterell Road, but that seems to have disappeared. And so the pressure is going to be on Garstang. I'm talking to people in Cambers the other day at the Cambers Parish Council, And people say, oh well, you know, the land that's there with the issues and options not necessarily going to be built on. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I think it's very likely it is going to happen. And if you take into account, as we said earlier, about Blackpool as well, you know, we aren't going to have many green fields in and around our borough, and you know, people like coming into Wyre, and I think, you know, Mr. Chairman, it's going to be devastating to us all, and it really makes me very sad, you know, it really does. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There may be things to criticise from a national policy perspective, but first and foremost, Wyre needs to change its own approach in order to better manage its current housing stock and thereby any future housing requirements. The housing priority should be to better manage what housing already exists, not build yet more houses without jobs and infrastructure. The housing priority should include compulsory purchase of empty houses that are dilapidated and in need of repair, and potentially the demolition and rebuilding of housing that is no longer fit for purpose. However, I have to admit being somewhat taken aback when reading this planning motion. Could this motion criticising possible planning reform possibly come from the same political group that mismanaged house building in Borough so badly for the last 5 decades? Yes. Are the people complaining about building on green fields the very same people who are responsible for the destruction of many of our last remaining fields in the west of the borough? Yes. Is one of the motion signatories the same person who broke the land speed world record in his fleeing of his Carlton seat because he knew he would lose it due to this Tory Council's house building policy? Yes. Anyway, here we are with this motion before us, but before we go any further, we all need to be on the same page with regard to what the actual issues are here and which of those this council should and shouldn't be concerned about. Point 1. This is an ongoing government consultation seeking views on a proposed approach to revising the National Planning Policy Framework. This is work in progress and the outcome of that consultation is still to be determined. Point 2. Let's dispel any misunderstanding over the difference between green field and green belt. Wyre's only designated green belt covers an area of 684.7 hectares on the urban peninsula to the west of the borough, between Fleetwood, Thornton-Clevelys and between Poulton-le-Fylde, Thornton-Clevelys and Blackpool. Point 3. Let's remove some of the misinformation bandied around by providing you with what a Labour government is committed to. Labour will take a brownfield first approach, prioritising the development of previously used land wherever possible. Labour is committed to preserving the green belt. Release of any lower quality grey belt land that the Labour manifesto refers to is yet to be specified, and in any case the impact on Wyre is likely to be nil in terms of the current green belt areas of separation. With that in mind, the motion all boils down to questions about what is at this time only a possible Wyre housing requirement figure. Disappointingly though, there seems little or no point to the motion, as it requests absolutely no positive action to try to influence developing national planning policy. One might disagree with a number that may or may not be allocated, but what's more disagreeable is the standard method itself. It is fundamentally flawed, has been for many years, and a complete rethink is required. A 637 dwellings per annum target would mean a 25% increase in population in 20 years' time, after a 6% increase in population over the last 20 years. It is fairly clear such a high target would be extremely difficult to deal with. This is especially so given the current transport, employment and public open space deficits caused by this council's mismanagement over the last 51 years. So let us come to agreement about how to push back on the flawed standard method of calculation. Hopefully the ruling group will be receptive to a revised motion put forward for consideration, because we do generally agree that we need to make a representation on what is the right national planning framework. With that in mind, the Labour group therefore wishes to put forward an amendment which Democratic Services are hopefully now emailing to everybody, but I shall read it out in any case, and if anybody needs a printed version, I'm sure Democratic Services can provide those. So the amendment from the Labour group reads, this council requests the Chief Exec on behalf of the council to formally respond to the government's ongoing planning consultation in order to reflect the council's wish for the standard method of calculation of the mandatory housing requirement to be fundamentally changed. It does so based on the possibility that under the current proposals, Wyre allocation may rise to a minimum of 637 dwellings per annum, which would result in a 25% increase in Wyre's population if this persisted over the 20-year term of a local plan. This council acknowledges the need for new housing, and the Planning Committee and Planning Policy Group will of course remain open to listening to all arguments on all future matters that come to the committee. But such an increase in housing requirement would be unworkable and would likely place too high a burden on public service and infrastructure in Wyre. It is requested that the consultation response includes a compelling case for a change to the standard method of calculation based on the fact that every borough's circumstances are different. I.e., Wyre is surrounded by the Irish Sea to the west, Morecambe Bay to the north, has an area of natural beauty to the east, and it is bounded by Blackpool and Fylde to the south. It also has a river running through it with a floodplain that should restrict buildings. The method should be based on geographical features, green belt separation of towns, available land not in a floodplain, expected population growth, current density of population, local employment provision, local transport provision, public open space provision, ability to bring empty houses back into use, ability to demolish and redevelop. The consultation response needs to get across the point that by employing such a method of calculation, there would be absolutely no need whatsoever for any council to be expected to take on board the housing requirement of a neighbouring authority. On the 6th of July 2023, this council unanimously resolved that it is against any change to the national planning policy that would make it easy to build on green belt. Consequently, the council also requests the Chief Exec to include in the response to the ongoing planning consultation the wish to manage its own green belt areas of separation and not be expected to redesignate current green belt to grey belt that would result in neighbouring towns merging. Thank you.
Would you please advise on whether or not the amendment is valid?
Next Madam Mayor,
Is there a seconder for the amendment that's been proposed?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak later.
We've already been here a while, Madam Mayor, so I'll keep it brief. It's funny how you keep bringing up the fact that I changed wards, but you never bring up the fact that Beavers ran from Rossall to Fleetwood Park, so that seems to come up when you make your little jokes, Councillor Bale. And also need to remind people, and we're going to remind people when the next election is, who built on the green belt in Carlton? Labour did. Labour controlled Blackpool Council, applied for planning permission, we refused it, and they won it on appeal. We will be making that point much better than we did last time, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, what's being proposed basically is we think we should be able to write to the Minister and say you should rip up the standard method for calculating this, and we are a special case for the following reasons. Successive governments have had a standard method for calculating. This government has just changed the way it's calculated. There's no way they're going to listen to a consultation response like this, and we will be responding, I can assure you, to object to this as part of the consultation response. But, Madam Mayor, this motion is designed to send a message clearly to government that what they are seeking to do to Wyre and other conveniently, by chance I'm sure, conservative areas, to have a ridiculous number of houses dumped on us. That we are against it, our residents are against it, and we won't tolerate it. Further, Madam Mayor, I find it particularly amusing that it's forgotten in all the 51 years of mismanagement, they had control for 4 of them.
Well, what I can say, I'm not knowing the other way from me, but knowing what the Conservative Party is, I'll I'm going to have my say now. I'd like firstly to congratulate Councillor Fylde for a very comprehensive explanation of words and he works so hard on it. He probably burns the midnight oil, but he gets everything done, and it's all absolutely spot on, correct, checked, and he's delivered it tonight with great authority. And I'm very pleased to say that we've got such as a leader. Is actually, your initiative, he's actually robbed you of your initiative. He has, with what he said tonight. Now, why should Wyre be any different than other authorities? You know, we're very sorry, Councillor Vincent, that Conservatives are going to have housing built on near where they live, and you know, to provide other people who might not be Conservatives with housing. But the main criteria here is to provide housing, not to have political, although we don't want to put it there because our Conservative voters don't like it. We in the Labour Party have had a lot of property put up in our areas, what we haven't liked, but we've had to lump it and like it. So that's the thing. Now, when it comes to plans, Madam Mayor, the Tories just don't like them. They don't want to discuss them because they don't really have any. It's just like it's conservative philosophy to let things spin out and let them happen, you know, eventually. Like the saying it's manana. He's terrified of plans. So, to come back to Councillor Vincent, I think he's got a cheek to come out about his, even mention, he doesn't even live in the area. He doesn't live in Wyre, and he's only a member of this council by a trick which was brought out years ago. If you want, you know, if you own property or something in the area, and you note he did a runner from Poulton, because he knew perfectly well he wasn't going to get elected again. So, you know, Michael, you want to be careful what you say. You want to think about what you say.
What's this going to do with that?
Have you a point to make for or against
yes, I'm going to stand here, Madam Mayor, and I'm going to exercise my freedom of speech. And I hope you're going to allow me to do so.
Well, a lot of crap tracks you're coming out with.
To say, only that you lot at times disgust me. Thank you.
Councillor Fylde, there's a proposal of the amendment, and can you respond to the debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I said everything I wish to say earlier on, but just to correct something from Councillor Vincent. It was Conservatives in Wyre Council that allowed the green belt in Carlton to be changed to white land. They voted for that change as part of the adoption of the local plan in February 2019. The Labour councillors did not. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We'll now move to a vote on the amendment. Will those in favour please show? Those against? Any abstentions? The amendment is lost, so we will now therefore continue to debate the original motion.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Cartridge, would you like to address it?
I'll keep this very brief. For years, the Wyre Labour Group have unfairly and repeatedly attacked this council for building mandated homes on green spaces and not supporting infrastructure projects to complement them. Now, their Labour Prime Minister wishes to accelerate house building in Wyre, destroying swathes of green space, whilst at the same time axing vital infrastructure projects across the borough, such as the Fleetwood-Poulton rail link. I also hope they come clean to residents in Carlton and in other wards when his Labour chums in Blackpool dump yet more housing on our borough. So I'm incredibly interested to see how your group votes. But what I do know is that your group, just like on the issue before the winter fuel allowance, are squirming to square their position with their national party, and it really shows.
Councillor Vincent, as the proposer of the motion, would you please respond to the debate?
Yes, I'm there to say let's vote.
Yeah, let's
Of those in favour of the motion, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. That concludes the business for this evening, and the meeting is closed. Thank you all for attending.